Hey guys, it's me, Mario, and today we're going to continue the great Dragon Book. Yes. How you guys doing today? Hope you're doing well. It is the season to be jolly. Right, Chapter 8. Nanook the Snow Monster, Chapter 8. Fury in the Snow. Fury? Yeah, I think that's it. Fury. Not furry. I have to face my fears, Tom told himself. The quest is too important. I cannot fail. The kingdom of Eventia is counting on me. Certainly, he touched his heels to Storm's side, and with Elena clinging on behind him, they galloped towards the snow dune, and found themselves at the head of a narrow path. At the end of a narrow path. The beast was standing right in front of them. She was taller than the bear, and twice as wide. Her fur was white, her eyes redder than a blacksmith's fire, and her ivory claws looked sharper than daggers. Her hideous face was scrunched up with anger and hate, and around her welted neck hung a tiny bell on the end of the chain. It glowed with evil energy. Nanook pulled at the chain, trying to tear the bell free, then howled furiously and stamped a paw on the ground. The whole snow dune shuddered. Elena gasped in horror. Then Nanook spotted them. Giving another terrifying roar, she lunged forward, her ivory claws reaching for them. Silver yelped and Storm reared, throwing Elena and Tom to the ground as Nanook closed in, heading straight for Tom. Just in time, he dived aside, his shield held above him. As the beast's claws ripped through the air, Nanook's claws wedged deep into the wood and wrenched the shield away. Then she turned and threw it straight back at him. He ducked and it whistled past him back into the ice field. He didn't stand a chance without it, but now he had to run back over the treacherous ice to get it. He set off at a sprint, his lungs burning and his legs thumping, expecting to feel the beast's claws slice through his skin at any moment, just as he was almost within reach of his shield. He slipped on the ice. Helplessly, he skidded past the shield, grabbing it as he went, then crashed into another snow dune. "Tom, look out!" Elena yelled. He turned to find Nanook lunging towards him for a second time. Again, he swung up his shield to protect himself. The snow monster's huge paw smashed into it with enough force to knock Tom halfway up the snow dune. He heard the storm whiny with fear. He heard the storm whine with fear, and underneath the beast's roar, the persistent jangle of the enchanted bell. His shield arm burned with pain. With a pang of terror, Tom knew Nanook was only just getting started. Elena, take Storm and Silver and get out of here, he shouted quickly. The beast stamped a huge paw down on the ice and thrusted her paws towards Tom as he laid stunned on the dune. But then, with a deep splittering crack, the ice cave way beneath her. In an instant, she vanished down through a narrow, jagged hole into the freezing depths, just as Elena had done. Dazed, Tom watched the water churn and bubble. Tom cried Elena. Tom! Cried Elena from across the ice. Draw your sword. Tom shook his head, trying to clear it. What? When Nanook comes up for air. But as she spoke, the water exploded upwards in a freezing fountain, and Nanook broke the surface with a triumphant roar, giving Tom a clear view of the chain at the back of her neck. Quickly, Tom! Cried Elena as the beast began to haul herself out of the icy water, her back towards him. Taking a deep breath, Tom pulled out his sword, dived forward on his stomach and slid across the ice like a seal. As he reached the beast, he slipped the tip of the blade between the raw patchy skin on her neck and the chain, and twisted as hard as he could. But the thick chain was not going to break all that easily. He pulled again, as hard as he could, with both hands on the hilts of his sword. He strained back as Nanook plunged back into the freezing water, trying to drag him in with her. And roaring with anger, Tom leaned all his weight back, pressing his feet hard as he could on the slippery ice. He mustn't be pulled into the water. That would be the end of him. He could see the chain bending further and further. Please break, he begged it. Then all of a sudden, to his joy, the chain exploded, vanishing in a burst of bright blue light, as if into thin air. As if into thin air. And the tiny bell dropped to the ground in front of him, silent forever. Yes, he shouted, thrusting his sword into the air triumphantly. Nanook sank back into the water without another sound. Tom waited tensely for her to resurface, but the turquoise water that had swallowed her remained still. Had he freed the beast? Perhaps he had killed her? And had he failed in his quest after all? Then the ice smashed open in a sparkling cascade, and Nanook reappeared, pulling herself out of the water and shaking the drops from her thick white fur. Her eyes were no longer red, but a glittering icy blue. For a long moment, Tom and the beast looked at each other. Then the snow monster shuffled softly towards him. Tom drew in his breath, but all she did was press her cold. What's not again? Red snoot against his cheek, as if to say thank you. Then, abruptly, Nanook turned on her heel. She leaped towards into the ice field, her arms pumping and her feet striding across the ice with amazing speed, raising one giant fist in farewell. She vanished behind a snow dune. She was gone. More than that, she was free. Tom felt a flush of pride. Another magnificent beast had been unchained from Marvel's evil spell. How lucky he was. He'd come face to face with the kingdom's most powerful creatures. Most other people thought the beasts were another more than myth. But he had met and fought them. And he was saving the entire kingdom of Eventia at the same time. Noticing the tiny bell at his feet, he picked it up thoughtfully. The hot sun had disappeared behind gray clouds, and he could feel the temperature starting to plummet. Perhaps he had been right, and parts of Marvel's curse had been to make the northern lands too warm so that the ice fields melted. Then Tom's thoughts turned quickly to Elena. As the temperature had dropped, she must know she must now be feeling the cold from her tip in the ice lake. He ran towards her. She was shivering violently on the snow dune, her teeth chattering so hard she couldn't speak, her skin blue with cold. Tom pulled off his own fur-lined coat and placed it round her, then held her close to share the warmth of his body. Cold, she said faintly, clutching his arm, but you freed Nanook. Silver licked her face and nuzzled her ear. We freed Nanook. We all did it, said Tom. Then he added comfortably, don't worry. It'll be all right. He tried to smile, but inside he was starting to panic. Elena was soaked in to the skin. Her wet clothes could be fatal in the deadly cold. Soon night would fall. Without shelter, protection, or a sleigh to make their way back to camp, could Elena survive until the morning? And that was chapter 8. So they freed Nanook. Here's Nanook fighting. Here's Tom fighting Nanook, the snow monster. Here's her plummeting to the icy cold waters. Into the icy cold waters. Tom fighting Nanook. And here is Tom and Nanook just, looking at one another. Here's her leaving. Hopefully they get to the camp in time and Elena will not freeze to death. That would be nice. But yeah, Nanook is freed. We got one chapter left, the healing. Chapter 9, the healing. And yeah, we are almost done with the first series. After Nanook the Snow Monster and Epos. I think it's Epos. Epos the Flame Bird. Well, I hope you guys enjoy my videos. And I hope to see you in the next one. Alright. Bye. See you later. Bye-bye.